The Palace of Versailles, which has been on UNESCO's World Heritage List for 30 years, is one of the most beautiful achievements of 18th century French art. The site began as Louis XIII's hunting lodge before his son, Louis XIV, transformed and expanded it, moving the court and government of France to Versailles in 1682. Each of the three French kings who lived there until the French Revolution added improvements to make it more beautiful. Early in the morning on July 23rd, we rode the train from the Paris city center to the city of Versailles, located some 12 miles away.
Yo no tengo la línea esta, ¿dónde va?
Si caminamos nomás.
Vamos a preguntar a ver qué
tienen razón
diferencia hay.
los de motivo.
We then proceeded to walk along Paris Avenue, where we photographed the handsome facade of one of the Versailles City Hall buildings. This imposing neo-Louis XIII building dates from 1897. Louis XIV's equestrian sculpture returned to Versailles in 2009 to the location designated by the public establishment in front of the Avenue of Paris. It was still early in the morning, and the number of visitors was unbelievable. The Golden Gate to the Palace of Versailles has finally been replaced, more than 200 years after being torn down during the French Revolution. clock was mounted on the facade of the main royal court building in 1679. It is surrounded by the statues of Hercules and Mars. A closer look at some of the beautiful statues adorning the facade. Paved in black and white marble, this courtyard has been raised to its original level. The three arched windows of the king's first-floor bedroom in the main pavilion are fronted by a gilded balcony resting upon 8 marble columns. Then it was time to visit the interior of the palace. The newly renovated apartments of Mesdames were occupied for 20 years from 1769 until the Revolution by the daughters of Louis XV, Princesses Victoire and Adelaide. The tribune level is accessed by a vestibule, known as the Salon de la Chapelle. It was constructed at the same time as the chapel. The Salon de la Chapelle is decorated with white stone and bas-relief sculptures. Dedicated to Saint Louis, patron saint of the Bourbons, the chapel was consecrated in 1710. The chapel is one of the palace's grandest interiors. The altar of the chapel, the very spot where Marie Antoinette married Louis XVI. The half dome of the apse is decorated with the resurrection of Christ. The chapel was deconsecrated in the 19th century and has since served as a venue for state and private events. Musical concerts are often held in the chapel of Versailles. The floor of the chapel itself is inlaid with polychromatic marbles. This is the view as seen from the Tribune Royale, where the king and members of the royal family heard Mass. The ceiling of the nave represents God the Father and His holy glory bringing to the world the promise of redemption. Chancellor of France 3 times, and pronounced by Voltaire to be the most learned magistrate France ever possessed. A French naval commander who served under King Louis XIV. He was made Marshal of France in 1693. Known as the Eagle of Brittany, was a Breton knight and French military commander during the 100 Years' War. He was Constable of France from 1370 to his death. The king's grand apartment consists of the most popular rooms. The salons are magnificent. They are in the Louis XIV style, and each room is dedicated to an Olympian deity. The best known and largest is the Hercules Salon, its ceiling painted by François Lemoyne, depicting the apotheosis of Hercules. Over the fireplace mantel hangs a painting by Paolo Cagliari entitled Rebecca at the Well. Also adorning this salon is the famous Feast in the House of Simon painting, also by Paolo Cagliari. Along with the Salon of Diana, the Salon of Venus is one of the main entrances to the grand apartments. Statue of Louis XIV as a Roman emperor. The salon has beautifully decorated doors. The ceiling paintings show representations of Antony and Cleopatra among others. The Diana Salon is the showcase for Bernini's marble bust of Louis XIV, which took 40 days to create. This is one of the few portraits for which Louis XIV agreed to pose. He allowed 13 sittings. This sculptural portrait of Louis XIV has been called the grandest piece of portraiture of the Baroque age. Ceiling detail. The Mars Salon is the entrance to the Mercury Salon. The ceiling's central composition by Claude Audran II represents Mars on a chariot pulled by wolves. The body of Louis XIV was put on display in the Mercury Salon in 1715 as a tribute to his 72-year reign, the longest in history. Louis XIV was offered this clock by its creator, Antoine Morand, in 1706. The fascinating thing is that we can see through the mechanism. There is a gilded figure of Louis XIV crowned by victory. The ceiling is adorned with a large painting of Mercury in his chariot. The Apollo Salon was Louis XIV's throne room. A copy of Hyacinthe Rigaud's famous portrait of the king hangs there. The ceiling painting depicts Apollo in the chariot of the sun, accompanied by the seasons, and it is by Charles de la Fosse. The room's theme of war is reinforced by a bas-relief of Louis XIV riding to victory. This was made by the sculptor Antoine Coisevaux. An exquisite ceiling detail. Panels paying tribute to victories. Tribute to victory over Germany symbolized by the kneeling eagle. Ceiling panel paying tribute to victory over Holland. The Hall of Mirrors is the central gallery of the palace. The principal feature of this hall is the 17 mirror-clad arches that reflect the 17 arcaded windows that overlook the gardens. Each arch contains 21 mirrors with a total complement of 357 used in the decoration of the gallery. The arches themselves are fixed between marble pilasters whose capitals depict the symbols of France. The Palace of Versailles offers visitors a chance to walk in the footsteps of royalty and visit intimate chambers, including the king's grand apartments. But perhaps the most famous room at Versailles is the Hall of Mirrors, which was once haunted by courtiers playing politics or awaiting an audience with the monarch. This same room later witnessed one of the defining moments of 20th century European history, when the Treaty of Versailles, ending the First World War, was signed within its walls in June 1919. The King's Chamber. This is the room where the Sun King would die. This golden rail in front of the bed demarked the distance the courtiers had to observe when they visited the king in this chamber. The Queen's chamber is the main room of the apartment, the one where the Queen spent most of her time. She slept here, often joined by the King. In the morning she received here during and after her toilet, which constituted a court event as regulated by etiquette as the rising of the King. It was here too that births took place in public. 19 children of France were born here. Adorning one wall is the painting of Napoleon's coronation in Saint-Denis Basilica. Versailles' sprawling, stunning palace is matched by the splendor of the gardens in which it is situated. A pleasurable visit can be spent simply pursuing paths and admiring fountains and flowers without setting foot inside the palace. Unfortunately, due to sporadic rain showers, we had to cut short our visit to the magnificent gardens. Versailles' vast chateau gardens are famed for their geometrically aligned terraces, tree-lined paths, ponds and canals. Spreading west of the palace, the Versailles Chateau Gardens cover 800 hectares. One of the most special aspects of the gardens is the 50 fountains which act as focal points. Unfortunately, the fountains were not working when we visited. The head of the sun god Apollo is surrounded by rays of light and recalls the emblem chosen by Louis XIV. For its annual encounter with contemporary creation, the Palace of Versailles welcomed Giuseppe Pennone.
Ah, da delle dolci.
Mira,